All right, so we are back with Social Out with the fifth, and got a really, really awesome guest today, and one of my good friends and a brilliant marketer, in Erin Levzow. I guess getting right into it, we are homies, to say the least, and I could probably do some level of justice in talking about your incredible professional background, but probably be better served by having you give us a quick walk through who you are, what you do, what you've done, and all that great stuff.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having me. Friend, homies, I think I'll refer to us as homies from now on.
Perfect.
Erin Levzow. I have a vast career in hospitality, retail, restaurant, CPG, all things, agency and brand side. Grew up in Illinois, spent 10 years in Las Vegas, and just worked my way up from... I actually started in theater, went into HR and talent development, recession hit, don't need trainers. And they said, what do you know about internet marketing? I said, I have a Facebook. And so I started at Caesars Corporate at the bottom of the barrel, worked my way up, went over to MGM, did the same thing, then the Palms, and then decided to move to Dallas, where I led all social and digital for Wingstop restaurants and helped grow the company and take it public. Then went to Austin and was the CMO of Freebird's World Burrito. Then went to Hathaway, which is now Bounteous, and led the reoccurring revenue model vertical, bringing in reoccurring revenue of marketing services, CRM, and loyalty services, and worked with vast companies from L'Oreal to just about any restaurant you can think of, and just had a blast. In my free time, I helped build Willow's Adults Only Hotel and Spa in San Diego. I worked for Viejas Casino as the interim CMO, then went up to Milwaukee, where I was the CMO of Marcus Hotels and Resorts, 21 hotels throughout the U.S., 50 independent restaurants, and got to build St. Kate the Arts Hotel, which is a come-as-you-are art hotel based after St. Catherine, the patron saint of arts. Then went to Del Taco and Jack in the Box and led marketing technology and replatformed all of their loyalty, CRM, and digital. And then most recently was the CMO of Museum of Ice Cream.
It's amazing. Like I said, she's amazing. A lot going on there. One of the things I'll key in on, because I always love and know somebody's been in the space, and you're certainly an OG in the space, when you have the title of internet marketing, that means you were in at a very early stage. So we'd love to understand from you, from the early days of internet marketing and digital strategy to where we sit today, what are some of the changes that have most positively impacted the space, and how have the things that you would define as positive impacted somebody like yourself who sits at the CMO level doing their job better?
So early on, I quickly recognized that when we called it internet marketing, it was actually the redheaded stepchild of what they considered real marketing at the time, right? At the very beginning, they were like, we'll see if this takes off, right? This internet thing. And I quickly said, people who are data-driven internet marketers, which we don't even call it that anymore, will be the next CMOs. And people are like, no, it's never going to replace the traditional side, right? If you don't know how to buy on a TRP or broadcast level, you'll never be able to do this. And I mean, when I started, social media advertising wasn't even a thing, right? There was no idea that you could actually do an ad on social media at that time. And it went from internet to then we called it interactive, then we called it digital, and now we just call it marketing. And you don't have to say I'm e-commerce or I'm product marketing. You are just marketing, and it's an expectation that you should be a digital first marketer.
For sure.
And we're seeing that more and more, the same way we're seeing digital first marketers become CMOs, and we're seeing CMOs now become CEOs, to the point where it used to be you had to be a COO or CFO to become the CEO. And now we're seeing that type of data-driven results of marketers who can understand the full spectrum and have to work cross-departmentally is what's moving into that CEO role. Yeah,
it's awesome to hear it put in context like that. And you talked about your most recent role, which was as a CMO of Museum of Ice Cream. Very dope experience and space. And we often talk about and see, as I think most marketers are seeing, experiential, also bleeding into social, and those two things, supporting one another. I'd be curious to know, how should today's marketers look at the role of experiential, the role of social, how those things come together to support pushing out powerful brand messaging, brand narratives?
So I was actually having this conversation recently about experience, and they go, well, not every company is an experience company. I said, I would argue that they are. And I would argue that every single company out there should be focused on the experience first and not, hey, I have a product. It's what does that product bring you? What is that experience you have? And the experience could be you're a value product, right? And the experience is I'm giving you a really great product for a value. And someone was arguing with me, and they go, sometimes you just need to sell Febreze, let's say, and someone just needs it. And I said, but think about the experience. Think about how you market that. That whole thing is built on experience. And the Febreze story is actually a very fascinating story about how that product came to be and the experience that it had to create from it. And we're seeing more and more retail companies actually come and go, how do we build an experience around this? And you can't go product first, experience second. It has to be experience first, product to second. But that leads right into brand messaging and brand purpose, which is there has to be a purpose. Mm-hmm. And that's, why is this great? So someone said to me, what if you one day had to do something really boring, like it's like a piece of an equipment that goes in like a stent for a heart. What if you had to sell stents that go in your heart if your blood vessels clot? And I said, so I get to save lives? Did you just tell me I get to save lives? That's a purpose, right? But if you think about it as a product, you're forgetting the purpose. You're forgetting the experience. And that's really fascinating to me if we think about it differently. Sticking
on the social piece of that, social has become a much more integral part of just about, and I think is vertical agnostic, just about every brand should find the right way to show up there, right? So the role of social in 2024, and let's look forward a little bit, both in driving successful outcomes, which you mentioned, very important to have measurable outcomes that you're going for, but also the role of the marketer and getting internal buy-in and investing in social as a channel. Can you give us some insights or best practices as to what that looks like?
Yeah, well, social, like you said, it's important, vertical agnostic, right? Completely important. And now even more than ever, you're seeing someone can start a business on social media and do better than the big companies out there. And that's who the big companies have to watch now. I was talking to a massive retailer in makeup, and I said, how are you dealing with the fact that so many people can show up and be like, buy my eyeliner on TikTok, it's better, and they're not selling it into your big retail. They are selling it direct and making more money, and you can be the mom and pop shop and do that. And that comes from a marketing first approach. And we're actually seeing people and society want to spend money that way. They don't want to go after the bigger companies. They want to go after the smaller companies. And so you're seeing some of these even bigger brands go, you know what, we're going to spin up a cleaning brand, but we're going to tell everybody it's a mom and pop shop, and they won't claim it. So like these really massive cleaning companies will not claim even though they own it, they'll pretend it's mom and pop so they can spin it up on TikTok shop. And that to me is super fascinating. But it continues to evolve, and it continues to be, how do I show you that you need this, right? And everything I do as a marketer is, sometimes you don't even know you have an issue until me as a marketer tell you have an issue. And then I'm going to tell you how to solve it. And you happen to be able to solve it with the product that I'm going to sell you. And so that's number one. Hey, surprise, you have an issue. Next, here's the product that's going to solve your issue. You're welcome, and you can buy it right here. And that social has done so much for these companies.
So it's hard to talk about, in this day and age, social without talking about influencers. Mm-hmm. And something I even taught your time at Museum of Ice Cream, a lot of influential personalities, people going into the locations and posting about a great experience. So as it pertains to best practice consumer marketing, brand marketing, what are some of the ways that you have leveraged influencer to drive successful outcomes? And I guess, again, because we're looking forward a lot in today's conversation, what are some of the things you see coming that marketers should be looking at in terms of being able to leverage influencers as part of their marketing mix?
That was like 4 questions in one. All right. Where do we start? So yes, are influencers important? Absolutely. But I would argue that everyone's an influencer. And so it's pushing them through the experience in a way that you're giving the same experience to everyone and you're expecting them. And now you're seeing these platforms pop up that are like mini influencers. And they're like technically someone reached out to me and they go, you're a mini influencer. And I was like, How about like
You
not
are an
as
influencer,
big, right? Like not as big. Like I don't have 1 million followers, but I'm doing okay, right? Like I learned the Barbie dance and they want to give me their product to show off. But like they want me to show it in a way that I would normally show it. Like just wear the shirt in the Barbie dance video, right? Things like that. So is everybody an influencer? Yes. But then how do you create an experience? We were lucky at Museum of Ice Cream. We had an amazing experience. It was all about the experience. And so influencers kind of flocked towards us and they were already coming. And so if they asked like, hey, depending on their following, can I get a ticket or two? Right? But we weren't paying influencers because they naturally wanted to come through. It's a little different if your product is like deodorant for the extra smelly person, right? Like you probably don't have people flocking to get free product of that. You may have to have some funding to pay for that in order to it to become something more well-known. But in that case, the more people that were talking about it, we knew the more people would talk about it because it's still word-of-mouth marketing. That's all influencer marketing is. We just happen to do it now on TikTok, Facebook, and all these other places. It's the same as if I paid someone to go get 10 people to bring them in, right?
Right.
Just different because it's digital. And if I forgot 50% of your questions, just let me know.
No, it's fine. I think you answered all of them. And I just think it's important to understand like who we're trying to speak to and what you're trying to accomplish. Because whether it's a Rick Ross being an influencer for like, Wingstop, or it's leveraging nano creators or user-generated content as a big part of your strategy to build up content, but also build a conversation within a community that you're trying to drive impact in. Like, as a brand, the idea that one size is going to fit all, or what brand X is doing is also going to work for brand Y, is just a fallacy, right? So
that you just hit it right on the head, which is, was Rick Ross the right person for Wingstop? It absolutely was, because our target demo was 18 to 24-year-old African-American Hispanic. When we first started, Troy Aikman was the spokesperson. And it wasn't until my team, I knew who Troy Aikman was because, well, I could age myself, but old enough to know. And my team goes, I said, what do you think he's famous for? And they said, he calls radio announcing for football games. And I said, why do you think he does that? We don't know. I said, do you know that he played football? No. I was like, well, that's a problem, right? And then like, who's his core demo? His core demo was more of our franchisee model. It wasn't the 18 to 24-year-old. And actually, if you study that demographic, which I know you do too, that's when you know what's going to be cool, hip, and trendy next, right? Like if you study what they're looking at and what they're following, that Gen Z, that's what's going to be the next cool thing. So we went out and we said, well, what do they follow? Who do they follow? What is that influencer? Rick Ross was that. Yeah. Made sense.
To meet the moment that marketing, especially for some of the brands that you've been fortunate enough to hold leadership positions within, and speaking to these broad communities that you're speaking to, there's quite the necessity to show up and create content and have great strategy and all the things that are necessitated to do that job really well. And sometimes that means leveraging some really great partners within your ecosystem to help you accomplish that. Because you've done it so many times and been successful in it, I would love if you could give some insights as to what goes into selecting great partners, agency partners, where you find that sync and synergy, and just some of those things that might just not necessarily be, oh, you can actually do the job, but some of the other things that you look for in a great partner.
Doing the job is like the bar, right? That's what gets you to the table. Right. But why do I choose my partners? Because they're good people. They somehow put good into the world. They're good humans to be around. I have friends that I will work with forever and ever, but I've known them for 13 years, and I may or may not have a spot for them, right? I'm not just putting them at the table if it doesn't fit, but they'll be my first call because I know they're a good human. I've followed their career. I know what's happening in their life. I know the brands they represent or the partners they represent. And then the relationship, because something's going to go wrong. And every partnership you have, there's something that's going to irritate. The client's going to be irritated. Something's going to miss the mark. Can I pick up the phone or text you? Will it be responsive? Will you handle it, right? What does that look like? That isn't just, oh no, sorry that happened. It's, I'm just as upset as you are, right? Customer Service 101, like get upset with me and then be like, but we're solving it together, right? And then you call it a partnership, but there's so many companies out there that don't look at it as a true partnership, and that word matters. But like, how do we actually become an extension of each other? So as an agency, as a partner, how are you part of my brand? How do you live and breathe it and not say something to me one day where it's like, oh, I didn't know your brand does that. And you go, how can I trust you to do your job if you don't understand my brand ethos, right? And vice versa. How can I, like, making sure our expectations are clear? So doing the job bare minimum. Everything else is the relationship. Obviously, pricing matters, but, like, can I pick up the phone and call you? Will I want to work with you again after this? Those are all things that I check the box on.
Yeah. And I think that's great advice, because I probably shouldn't be saying this as somebody who runs an agency, but I mean, there's a lot of really competent and capable, entities out there that can be great partners in a lot of different ways. I think making sure that you're responding to the other ways that you can be connected with the folks that you're partnering with, really important. So one of the things I respect about you, Erin, is you're always kind of in the know as to what's, like, going on, and when we're having marketing conversations, not just stuff you're doing, but, like, what else other people are doing that could be leveraged to, do your own job better. So I'd love to lean into you really quickly and get some words on, like, who else out there you see doing some of the things we're talking about really well, and what are some of the key learnings you've taken from some of those executions, activations, strategies that you've either implemented in your own job or just want to kind of put out there and say, hey, here's what you should be doing.
Oh man, different brands for different reasons, right? So, like Olipop and Poppy, very interesting on how they're coming up, and they're not sitting on multi-billion dollars of capital, so they're able to do it more grassroots. And I liken it to, like, how Red Bull started on college campuses, right? The kid would walk around and just hand you a can, and you're like, oh, it's cool. They don't do that as much anymore, but that's really what drove their popularity. Or my TikTok, I keep getting served these ads for Tarte, and it's like, girl, you haven't lived until you've used white eyeliner on your waterline. And I'm like, I haven't lived. I need white eyeliner, right? But they're not selling in Ulta or Sephora. They're selling directly through TikTok and killing it.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating too. But then there's other brands that still maintain kind of what got them there, right? But evolve it a little bit, like the Jake from State Farm or the Hump Day thing that lives, and they went, well, let's not kill it. They still bring it back because they know it's like people resonate with it. And I think that's really strong marketing. There's so many. And I find when you study all these different brands, you find different pieces where you're like, oh, they're doing that really well. Like I was talking to a financial company and you're like, why is that exciting? It's not exciting at all. But what's exciting about it is they had built their own AI engine internally because they were talking about the legalese that come with like ChatGPT and like where you're putting your data. And so if you build it internally and secure it, now they own that, but they built it on top of an LLM. And I was like, that's fascinating. They're doing something really cool, but it's in something as boring as like where my money sits, right? Which doesn't sound like it should be boring, but it is. So there are so many people doing a killer job in marketing, but it's knowing your lane, right? Knowing, am I the small company? What can I do with my dollars? We can all have big budgets. If you have a big budget, I almost guarantee you as a marketer, your job is a little easier than mine. When you have to worry about where all your dollars go and how hard they're working for you is when you know you were a true through and through marketer.
If it didn't go without saying in the intro, I'll say it again. Like you've been a lot of really cool stops in your professional journey, a lot of great levels of accomplishment across that journey. Outside of the accomplishments or even the label on the brand, what have you found makes a great company great in all these things that you've done? Like what personally, how do you feel? And then just from an operational standpoint, what have you seen that makes companies either on the way up or maintaining that high level position makes them great ultimately?
People first. And everybody says they're people first. Like everybody says, I'm a people first company.
Facts.
You're not. Like, I'm not saying you aren't, but like most companies aren't. They'll say we're people first unless sales are down and then we're not people first, right? So people first means you care about the core of your human and you believe that by caring about them, they're going to do a better job. And you lead not through a fear-based culture. So you have to actually care about your employees and not just the work that they do. And that's a people-first culture. Lifting people up, strength-based coaching, all of those things, true leadership. That is something that the company's going to do well and they're going to be sustainable, right? Because people will be loyal, which is a word we don't hear very often as it relates to working in a company. You don't hear loyalty because what we've taught people is that that company is not loyal to you, so you don't have to be loyal to them. But what if it was? What if that company is showing you loyalty, is helping you grow? That is a company that stays around. The other thing you look at is the diversity and how we approach it, right? And I look at intention, how someone says it, right, to me. So if someone says something to me, and I was listening actually, Mariska, I always say her last name wrong, but from Law & Order. If you ever get a chance to watch all her TikToks, they're amazing. And she is such a powerful powerhouse of a woman. And she talks about, sometimes men will come up to her and call her like chick or sweetie and stuff. And she goes, but you look at their intention and how they meant it. And if they didn't mean any harm by it, it's easy to say like, hey, a lot of women don't like to be called sweetie or chick. And she said, but if they're ill intent and they continue doing it, then she's like, I'm going to burn your house down. And I was like, oh, all right, well, that's fair. Maybe not, let's go that far. But it's that same idea as most people are good intentioned. I truly believe most people are good people.
Sure. And
when we can actually conversate and communicate about things, we can solve all the world. And when you find conversations like that in a company that aren't just like we're forcing everybody to share their feelings, right? If you create a culture like that, and that truly is top down as much as we say like it's everyone, it is everyone, but the top has to cultivate that, then you're going to have a company that sustains. And then businesses, it's how do each department work together. So if marketing isn't talking to operations, if marketing isn't talking to financials and looking at it, there's going to be walls, and it's going to be easier to shatter the house.
Yeah. Just disclaimer, this podcast does not advocate for burning down anybody's house, regardless of what they say to you. It's a better way to solve those problems. But no, that's I think this is a perfect place to maybe jump off with one last question, because you use the words powerhouse woman, and you are highly regarded, highly awarded, and just generally have a lot of incredible things to say just about every time we talk. And I certainly respect you in that manner, and you have an industry of folks who do as well. And one of the things I've always admired is that you seemingly consistently talk to and are speaking to that next generation of folks who can actually use some insights or some lessons about what to avoid or run towards in the pursuit of a great career. So speaking to those people who are just getting into or young in their marketing and advertising careers, and especially young women in pursuit of a fulfilling career, what would you take and distill in so many words as the best advice you could give to those people in terms about how to move forward and some of the things that they should be really focused on to succeed in this industry?
Well, thank you for the compliment. And this is where, like, if we were doing a film, I'd be like, cut in for the close-up for the really genius words I'm about to say. And in those words, I would tell you, if you put good into the world, good will come back to you. And that sounds so simple. But I've had enough midlife crises. I don't know, what's the plural? It's like geese, goose, I don't know. Crises, sure. I've had enough of them now, and I'm not old enough to have enough of them yet, but enough to know that when my eulogy is given, no one's going to be like, she won an award one day. Or, you know what she did? She was a CMO. That's not going to matter. What's going to matter is what I leave behind. And so when I talk to the young generation, it truly is, what is that thing? What is your purpose? Still have boundaries. Don't just put it good into the world and that's it, right? Like, unless we're all like volunteering for a daily life, but treat people well. Know where you want to go or have an idea of what's next. Lean in and say yes to things. There's a great book about Second City called Yes and it's the improvisation and leadership parallels. Find a hobby that isn't just working all the time, but that teaches you new things. Look at how you spend your time. I mean, there's so many different ways of really looking at what you want to do and where you want to go. And at the end of the day, no one can tell you what to do. Young people often will be like, well, my mom said, I don't care what your mom said. What do you want to do? Like, that's great. You should totally have a great relationship with your mom. But what do you want to do? And sometimes when you ask someone that, whether they just got out of college or they're 4 years in, they'll go, oh, I don't know. And I was like, I'm not asking what you want to do in 10 years. What do you want to do right now? What would be exciting? What would be fun? What do you start glowing and light up the world with? Go do that. And actually, I love Matt Rife. I like his comedy work. Like if you watch him as a stand-up comedian, and he takes a minute in his stand-up routines, and he will say, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you do? And people would be like, I've always wanted to do this. And then he'd go to someone else in the audience. He's, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing? And then he stands there and he goes, so what's stopping you? And when you're young, this is your time to take risk. I packed up my car, I drove to Vegas and bought a $100 mattress off of some guy's truck and dragged it into my apartment where they had found a dead body because I was like, I'm going to take a risk. I didn't die. Whoa. It was great. Yeah. But that's your time, right? I had nothing to lose. Yeah. Worst case, I was going to lose like the $600 I made at Olive Garden by being a horrible waitress. But like, I really had nothing to lose. And so when you're young, that's your time to take the leap, take the jump. As you get older, as you become more seasoned, you find yourself feeling risk averse. But if we can actually encourage ourselves as we get older to take the leap too, how exciting our life becomes. And when I go back to that eulogy, I want someone to go back and go, she really lived. That's all I want. She really lived and she put good into the world. If I did that, I did well.
Take the leap, put good into the world, and good will come back to you. It's great advice to wrap this on. Erin Levzow, the homie. Appreciate you coming through. Wise words always, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And that's it from us. Another episode, Social Out with the Fifth.